Hi, Kenny. Hi, Will. How are you guys doing?
Hello, doing good.
Hey,
Good,
Erin. Hey, Will. I'm good as well.
good. I'm glad that you guys are doing all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
What have you
today,
been up to?
same old, same old. As I always say, no one comes to see a therapist when they're happy. So
Mm,
um, I'm just being
true.
a mental health professional, and sometimes I'm being a sexual health professional. So, it's the same old, but I don't think I would change anything. Uh, I like what I do.
Good. All right. I like what I do too. But like you said, nobody comes to talk to us when they're happy. So I imagine that today's conversation was sparked because somebody expressed some dissonance around the topic, some issues.
Yes. Yeah. Today we're going to talk about sexuality and religion. A couple of my clients are bringing up how, as they get into long-term relationship or marriages, how they grew up in a certain religion or church, it's having an impact on the relationship, in a
Hmm.
negative way. And so I just thought that would be an interesting topic for us to get into today.
I'm down for that. Okay.
Okay. And I know that all three of us have pretty different viewpoints. We come from religious, different religions. And we don't have to name them if we don't want to, but, they're very different. And then now we're here today, advocating for, not, sex positivity. And so I think this will be a really good topic today.
I agree. I'm excited to talk about it. So,
Where we can start is just asking straight off the bat, have each of us experienced, when it comes to religion, that somebody has taught us or attempted to minimize our sexuality in the name of religion or religious preference? Have we all experienced that?
oh, definitely, yes.
I have as well. How about you, Erin?
Um, I didn't really feel connected in the church, but I did remember how there was like guilt and shame and disgust associated with sexuality, and sex was supposed to be, well, you only have sex if you're married, and sex for procreation. There was not a lot of sex education per se. Um, and when parents were talking about sex, or when mine, well, first of all, my dad didn't talk about sex at all. There were five kids in the family, and then my father didn't really have any conversations about sex. And then when my mother talked about sex, it was a shameful thing. Don't touch this and don't do this, and you'll get pregnant. And, it's, we were led to believe that if you touch your body, that it was a bad thing. And so, I just grew up with that. And so I just didn't know anything any differently about sexuality. There was nothing associated with pleasure, nothing associated with, autonomy with your body or any of that. So I was just shocked, by the time I got to college, um,
Hmm.
you know, had any kind of education, sex education.
And I think, just um, for the purpose of today's conversation, um, we can kind of use this format as we discussed, asking a few questions, whether any of our clients have experienced this, some of the answers, and then any of our own life experiences. But one of the often cited benefits of religion is a sense of community. either through a local church or synagogue, temple, or mosque, or through a personal identity and affiliation with a larger community. If this community is lost, then the person may be suddenly without a significant source of social support. Erin, you said earlier you never felt a real connection. Will, did you ever feel a real connection to either a religious or a community organization?
I did. So I was raised in church. My family is very religious, and I still am practicing in my own way. I'll put it that way. I'm not in the denomination I was when I grew up, but I know when I started transitioning, it was really difficult for me because we actually had a pastor tell us that I was not welcome in the church when I started transitioning. And for me, that was the first time I had ever, and I was in my 20s at this point, and I was one of those going to church multiple times a week people. So it was really ingrained in my day to day life. And suddenly having that taken away from me was, it really made me had to look at things from a different perspective. And it made me realize a lot of stuff about the way I was raised and how I knew they had wrong beliefs when it came to sexuality and stuff. But it was one of those things that I had kind of, it didn't affect me directly. So I kind of ignored it until it did affect me directly because I got kicked out of a church. And I ended up finding a church that was accepting and was very you know, had a much more positive mindset about sexuality and different genders and sexualities and stuff as well. So I still am involved in church to an extent, not nearly as it was when I was growing up, but losing that community was really difficult for me. It hurt a lot. It was like having a parent, kick you out of the house is what it felt like. I've lost a lot of friends who were church friends growing up because my existence no longer aligns with their personal beliefs and their religious beliefs. And I was told by a lot of people, like, I can't be friends with you anymore. And it kind of makes you realize how shallow is not the word, but it's that I want to use, but it's the word that comes to mind about how shallow some relationships were, that someone only views you as a friend as long as you fit within their guidelines for you. So yeah, I definitely had that happen in quite few different facets of my life, all tied back to my religious upbringing and people I met through church and stuff like that. So it definitely affected me a lot.
During that time, because as you mentioned, um, you had to kind of take a step back. Well, you were forced to take a step back from the church, not because you wanted to, but you were forced into that. How was your mood? Did you ever experience depression or anxiety because of the behavior of that group of people?
Definitely. It definitely hurt a lot. It honestly felt kind of like a breakup. Like you go
Yeah.
through with relationships, you kind of feel like you've been wronged and your feelings get hurt, and there's a lot of trust that's, destroyed in something like that. So it definitely upset me in those ways, but it also caused a lot of cognitive dissonance on my part as well, because I was raised with these core beliefs where my existence is now proving them to be wrong. The fact that I exist and am experiencing life, just as a transgender and as a gay man, those things did not fall in line with what I was raised as. So it caused a lot of issues for me growing up. And as I realized my own sexual identity as a teenager, before I even had kind of come to terms with the fact that I was transgender, I knew that I was a gay man on the inside since I was 14. I just hadn't put the pieces together because where I was raised, no one even spoke the words transgender. So I didn't even know that that was a concept that we existed. That's how limited my understanding was because of the religious area I was raised in. So it caused a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. So that was something I had to work through myself.
I I
So,
think a lot of people, I think that would resonate with a lot of people who have experienced not not any specific religion, but religion as part of their fundamental, like part of their youth growing up. When you're told that things are set in a certain doctrine and this is the only way that you can make it to whatever paradise that you have been told to believe in, when you don't fall into those columns, um, I know from my own experience growing up, um, my family had a lot of conversations of like, okay, yeah, we just learned this in church. This is what the pastor talked about. This is what we just read. What do you kids think about it? Um, and I questioned a lot of things. Um, I stopped attending church for several years. Then in when I got to college, I started to go again by myself and attended a different church, just to kind of get other viewpoints. And for me now, I find that I'm a lot more spiritual than I am religious, because religious doctrine is made by men who don't look like me, and it doesn't always have my best interest at heart. And so for me, I had to kind of like reconcile that there's a higher power that loves me, that made me, that hopefully accepts me, and that may just be me being super selfish and like really self-centered because it's all about me. Um, but I had to take a moment because religion is man-made, and um, it doesn't always keep me in the forefront. Um,
I like how you said that you're spiritual but not religious. I think that's a good way of how I would explain myself too, because I've always hated the term religious or religion because I don't really it like you said, it's man-made and it's something that I've never really aligned with as I've come to really understand myself. So I like that. I like that term.
I do also. I've been saying that for a while. Because religion to me, the term religion, it's or religious, it's how it's you're measuring your spirituality or how it's being identified for other people. But your
mm,
spirituality, it comes from within. It belongs to you. It's personal, and you shouldn't have to wear that for other people. It shouldn't be measured for other people. And so, with that said, well, Kenny, you were saying that you started questioning things, and then Will, you were talking about the cognitive dissonance. And so, do you guys believe that higher education played a role in, the way that you think now? You're
yes,
questioning things and like you're traveling and meeting other people. Like, has that played a role in where you are now? uh, like with the relationship power dynamic and the gender roles that people have tended to assign in religion as higher
absolutely,
education. Okay.
I would say yes,
absolutely.
yes, higher education, but even for me, outside of that, just meeting people, seeing what the world is like outside of the bubble I was raised in. Because growing up in one place for 20 years, you only see the same people and you only hear the same experiences. Getting out, traveling, and meeting other people that aren't the exact same carbon copy person that all lives in the same area makes you realize just how we all have some shared experiences, but some things are so different. And learning that people don't fit into that mold that my religious upbringing was saying all people are like this. No, they're not. So for me, it was a lot of actually just getting outside of my bubble and learning what the world is really like.
I think not everybody, even, I don't know how to say this. So, like, even when you get outside of your bubble, Will, you took that opportunity to expand. There are plenty of people who leave their bubble, their home, and still choose to keep those blinders on, who still choose to stand in judgment of others, and who have access to higher education and traveling from place to place, but still choose a different path. So, for me, Erin, your question was, did education help change my viewpoint? Absolutely. And having a family who was open enough for me to argue, like, you said this, but I don't really think it's that anymore. Can we talk about this? That was very helpful. There is a very famous family who is on television who has many, many children, and one of their eldest sons just made the news. And one of the daughters also is in the news for a completely different reason, because she has chosen to change her definition of modesty. And I, when it comes up on my news feed, and I'm like, why is this coming up? So I just opened it up, and I thought it was really interesting because she's written a book with her spouse, and she talks about how she got into the word herself, and instead of somebody telling her what the doctrine said, she did the work herself and realized that how she dresses is modest to her, even if it's not modest to other people. And that goes along with spirituality and not religion, because she got to make the decision for herself what was comfortable that still kept that conversation going between she and her higher power. Um, so, and it takes it back to the sexuality part. Um, the terms that we use nowadays in regards to homosexuality, and when people say, oh, that it's in the Bible, uh, which Bible are we talking about? Because people forget in Western culture, there's more than just the King James Version. Like, it's not even the oldest Bible out there. And people tend to go back and say, like, oh, well, this is in the Bible, or, this is what I was taught. And I'm like, well, that was just what some, like, old white dude with the beard wrote. I'm just saying. Just saying. So, but I don't know. It does impact people's morale and their morals.
Yeah, and
Is
even
that
the scriptures are just, they're taken out of context and they fit a narrative. And like the scriptures on homosexuality, or if there are any, and the scriptures on who's supposed to be the head of the household, and all of that, and they're basing it on gender, when that's ridiculous. Okay, it should be equal in the household, or it should be about what the strengths are and working as a team. And why should it be, well, the man is the head of the household and the woman should submit? What if he's terrible at managing money? Should you still hand him the checkbook? And I know I'm using checkbook. I mean, nobody's used a checkbook in 20 years. But seriously, like, should you hand him all of that if he's not good with managing the finances? Should he be technically the head of the household with regards to that? And then there are scriptures that insinuate that you should remain in an abusive relationship just for the sake of being in the marriage. I think that's ridiculous. You should do what you need to do to be safe.
Yeah.
Don't be stupid, and stay in something just because a book tells you that that's what you should do.
Right, right. And not to turn this into a whole doctrine discussion, but I think it's funny how people will pick and choose the verses they want to follow. Because if people really want to read the Bible from cover to cover and follow literally every verse, they should, anyone who sleeps with anyone who they're not married to, let's kill them. Or, like that's in the Bible. And also things like if a husband dies and isn't able to give his wife a child, his brother has to now give a child to the wife, and they just go down from brother to brother until someone has a son. So, I mean, there's a lot of things which people like to just kind of gloss over because that book was written by men who viewed women as property. And so, and also, as far as homosexuality goes, there are no verses on homosexuality. All the word homosexual or any words referring to it did not actually come into translations until the 1960s. Any words before that were actually Greek terms referring to illegal prostitution or sleeping with prostitutes in temples. So usually they're talking about promiscuity, not homosexuality, but someone changed the words up, and so instead of paying someone for sex services, they're just like, oh no, that just means a guy sleeping with a guy. So, and also, if you look at that too, the Bible never makes references of like lesbians or anything, so it's one of those things that people like to pick and choose what verses they want to follow, take things out of context, and they all seem to forget that it wasn't written in English. It was written in Hebrew and Greek, which a lot of words we don't even have direct translations for. A lot of their words just don't exist in the English language, so we're never going to be understanding completely how it was meant, but it was written by a bunch of guys who viewed women as property. You know?
And it was at a time when allegedly, when it was about populating the earth. Okay, and we're in a different era.
We have plenty of population now,
Okay, so we don't have to be concerned about populating the earth right now. And so, when the Bible is talking about, women being in, their property and, being submissive, and in the woman, she's doing the woman's work in the home, and then the man is out being the provider and all of that. That's not true today. Anybody can be the provider in a home, and anyone can take care of children. It doesn't have anything to do with a gender role, and we need to get rid of all of that. And things should be more egalitarian.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of really good books too. I know that we have a couple resources that we wanted to share with people of things that they can do to help research. As far as some of the homosexuality goes, and those they call them the clobber verses, the ones that really condone anything outside of marital heterosexual sex. A lot of times those are called the clobber verses. There's an entire book that kind of debunks that and actually goes back and looks at the original text and what they actually meant before people started taking those passages out of context. But another book that I actually had right here with me, and I was mentioning it to y'all earlier, it's Why Churches Need to, I think it's backwards for y'all, but Why Churches Need to Talk About Sexuality. And it's written by a guy named Mark Wingfield, and he was a leader in his church. And the whole book talks about how his church opened up the discussion to start discussing their views on or what their stances were going to be about homosexuality, gender identities and stuff, and how that ties into the Bible. And so it's actually a really interesting read because it follows that church's journey as they realized we are outdated on our stances. This is not the way the world works, and we need to update our mission statement. We need to update our bylaws and all of that to accept how people are and not just go by what people generations ago, old white guys told us to do. And so if you're someone who is like kind of wanting to figure out how to start those conversations, or you just want to see how someone else handled it, that's a really good book to look at, because it just kind of tears it down. It's a really raw read from both sides, because he's a very open-minded individual, but he also includes concerns that people on both sides of the debate had in his church, and he just lays it all out there and is like, this is what this person said, this is what we decided. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good read.
Thank you for that, Will.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's another book too. I think I told you guys about Shameless by Nadia Bowles-Weber, and her last name is hyphenated. It's Bolz hyphen Weber, Weber. And I think she may have two books. And she's talking about, the sexual reformation and how religion has played a role in the negative thoughts with regards to sex, and how when people get married, like in the church, they're just expected to know what to do with regards to, sexuality and having sex with a partner, all of that. And that's just not true. But she's a Lutheran minister, I believe. And so hearing it from that angle, it was really refreshing. So that's another really good read. Will, to add that to the book that you referenced as
Definitely.
well.
That reminds me, when you were talking about that, I wasn't raised Lutheran, but I was raised in probably one of the most conservative denominations of Protestant Christianity. I'll just leave it at that. But they used to have purity events in high school, and these were some of the most uncomfortable things. So while we're talking about it, I just had to share this story. They used to have, it was called Pure Freedom Weekend, and it was like teenage conference, but all the different breakout sessions and stuff were all about like being pure and stuff. And the only sex education you ever got was just abstinence, like just don't do it, but you're just magically, like you said, supposed to just know what to do when you get married. And it was just always so uncomfortable, because they would actually have purity cards that they would make you sign to say, like, I promise to stay pure until I get married, and you're supposed to give it to your parents. And they would actually have events like way on, like they would check to see if you still had your card, and they would tell it to carry it with you or keep it in your wallet or to keep it in your Bible. And just very cringy.
Yes.
It's at the time going through it, I didn't like it, and it made me uncomfortable, but I didn't know why. And now looking back, I can see why, because that's really messed up. What they used to do. And so those were some of my experiences, and that's why I think that's why I did have to branch out and kind of self-educate a lot when I was first starting out my journey and learning about sexuality and stuff, because in our church you just did not talk about it. You were just supposed to know how to magically do it. And then I feel bad for all the people going through that, because it's like they tell you can't do anything, you can't touch anyone, you can't kiss anyone, you can't do anything. Then boom, you get married, and all right, go, 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 go. But no one tells you what to do or how to do it safely, and you're just kind of left on your own. And it's not healthy at all. So that was how I was raised.
Well, and with that point, Will, like not having a conversation of what to do and how to do it safely, there can be a lot of guilt and shame if you're not enjoying it. Like, this is everything that's led up to this, right? And we're supposed to be having a good time. And yet, if somebody doesn't know what to do with their sex organs, with their genitalia, it can be uncomfortable. It can be frightening, because if you don't know that bodily fluid is a good thing on both parties, like, hey, this is what's supposed to happen, then you can be shocked and think that something's broken, or that it's that you're being dirty, or it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself could lead to you not wanting to continue to engage in the behavior, and then both parties being saddened or disappointed or experiencing depression or anxiety, because who can they talk to about it? Um, which is why, you know, religion, it can be freeing, it can give you a sense of community, but also it could limit so many people sometimes.
It keeps sex therapists in business, though.
Oh, for sure. High five for Will and Erin. Yes. Yes. It's true. Um, yeah.
So
That's rough.
what are some of those other there's a list of questions there
Oh yeah.
on an assessment that we saw. Are any of those of any interest to either of you that we can just put out there? Some things that come up with clients that we talk to.
For sure. So let me go back over there and pull it up. I'm opening up that PDF again.
I did like at the very, very end of it. I don't know if you'd just like me to read it, but
Go
they
for
kind of
it.
have like a summary at the very, very end, which I think can kind of give us an opportunity to open up the conversation some more. It says LGBT individuals don't have to choose between identity and spirituality. Faith plays an important role in the lives of many people all around the world, providing support in difficult times and often also boosting one's general mental well-being. LGBT individuals are no exception. Though their relationship with faith may be complicated in the case of non-affirming religious beliefs or potential rejection from spiritual communities, spirituality and religion can still be integral in the lives of LGBT individuals. You don't have to make a choice between your religion and your sexuality or gender identity. It's always possible to find affirming and accepting spiritual communities that can provide validation, support, and a basis for good mental health.
It is not easy, but communities do exist, whether they are right there in your backyard, where you can go and find a community of people who are open and understanding. And then there are those communities that are maybe a little bit more long distance, where you get to use technology to engage. So I think reading that summary, Will, is really important and very powerful.
I think it's good to remember that, even though I feel like I'm gonna say the word most, but I don't have exactly a number here. But I feel like most people's experiences growing up with religion are unfortunately typically the kind of responses we've had. It's been depending on where you're from. I'll put it that way.
Mhm.
Definitely, I feel here in the United States, for people who are raised in kind of Christian cultures, we tend to have, unfortunately, more negative experiences than positive. I know that's not the same for a lot of cultures and other countries around the world, where things are a lot more open and people actually discuss these things. But it's good to remember that not all spirituality, we can find a way to still be spiritual if that's something that's important to you. There are ways to find that. And if having a community, spiritual community is important to you, there are places that you can find that, whether it is online, especially with COVID. A lot of places have started to do
Mhm.
streaming online. So even if it's a church or a community that you're not close to, a lot of them you can find online to watch, to talk to other people, things like that. So there are options for people that this is important to them.
And there's like a breakout question from that conversation about connection with people. What family have you created? Just as Will said, because of technology, you can create a support group, even if it's not with your immediate biological family, that can help you grow in your spirituality. Um, that can be that beacon of hope when you're kind of like, when you're doing your questioning, when you're doing your research, when I don't want to go as far as saying it's like a crisis of faith, but sometimes a crisis can make you so strong in, other facets of your life and help you with some of your convictions, and change the way you view your world. So whether it is a crisis of faith because your family, um, or your community engage in one religion or another, and you don't check all the boxes off, like go find a group of people who are supportive. Um, it's it can be so liberating, super scary, but so liberating when you're experiencing that. Um,
Yeah, I agree. And read the comments.
and read the Kama Sutra. Yes,
Well,
yes, Erin.
well, seriously. Okay, so I mean, I know that sounds funny, but
No, but it's true.
the Kama Sutra is almost 4,000 years old, like almost as old as the Bible, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the first sex manual. And it's not what people think it is. It's a
Mm-mm.
beautiful piece of literature that has chapters and verses. It was originally in Sanskrit. It's been translated to English like in the late 1800s. And the Hindu people viewed sexuality um, like worship and creation, like they put it way up there at the top, not like we view sexuality in Western culture or like our religions in Christianity, like there's so much guilt and shame associated with it. That's not how they viewed sexuality. And if you look at some of the artwork that's associated with the Kama Sutra, it's beautiful. Like they've got jewelry and paintings and essential oils and fruits and all kinds of stuff. Like they really revered sexuality. And the first part of the book is communication and connection with your partner. You know, it's not all the sex positions because if you don't have the connection and communication with a partner, the positivity stuff, you're not going to get to any of the positions. Okay. So I absolutely encourage people to at least do that. Read the Kama Sutra. What are
I,
y'all's
th-
thoughts on
I think that the way that you just articulated that was really, for me, when as I was listening to you, it was really powerful and really kind of beautiful because in Western culture, in Christianity, like you said, sex is this really taboo thing, um, for procreation. And when you're doing it outside of marriage, there's a lot of guilt and shame that can be associated with it. And when reading the Kama Sutra in those first chapters, the level of communication, even if you never become limber enough to do everything, even with like, supportive pillows and, you know, stretching and breathing, even if you can't do all of the positions, the communication is what's important, which is what is a lot of times left out in sex education. It's left out in religious doctrine. Like, nobody talks about it. It's just this idea that you're supposed to do it. And who cares if you enjoy it? And um, by using the Kama Sutra, it's more than that. You should enjoy it. Both parties should enjoy it. Um, and communication is the key. Mm.
Would y'all like to go around? Because I'm kind of curious to hear from everyone, each of our perspectives, kind of in regards to our own personal sexuality. And you don't have to say like what you believe or anything like that, but just kind of how you like to practice your spirituality, or how it ties in with sexuality or something like that, or something that works best for you. Like any tips you have for anyone else, kind of that you found in your own personal, spiritual, and sexual lives.
Sure. Okay, so let me make sure I understand the question correctly, Will. You're asking what I have learned throughout my life to this point that now brings me joy and connection to my higher power, that I also kind of connect to my sexuality. Is that what you're asking?
It doesn't have to be so. I understand this is a really, really wide question. So let me kind of reword it.
Okay.
Essentially, like, I know that we don't have lots of time left on this podcast. So just kind of thinking, I think more like closing remarks slash comments, kind of your personal, like, hey, in summary, this is something that has helped me. Like some little parting tips, maybe for people in regards to either your spirituality or your sexuality, something like that. Um,
Oh,
I don't know,
okay.
something
Got
that's
it.
worked for you.
Okay. So what's worked for me is it's okay for me to have a good time. Um, it is okay for me to speak up and tell my partner, this is what I do like, this is what I don't like. When we do this, I enjoy myself. When we do this, I don't. Where can we meet in the middle? And by having that conversation throughout our time together, I never, I rarely walk away feeling that proverbial bad or guilt that I may have felt in when I was younger and engaging in certain sexual practices. Like I'm able to tell myself now, okay, you had a good time doing that. Who cares? If other people think it's good, bad, or indifferent. Um, I had a good time, and I never, when I am having my quiet time with God, I never have to ask for forgiveness for having a good time. That has really helped me where I am in my life now, in my late 30s. Um, Whereas I used to ask forgiveness. Oh God, forgive me that I did that. Ah, fuck that shit. Like, I don't do that anymore because I know that it's okay for me to have a good time.
I'm gonna roll with that too, Kenny. Yeah, I don't have guilt and shame and remorse and all of that. I don't do that. I believe in being my authentic self. I don't judge other people. I usually tell people, well, of course I don't judge others. I'm a therapist, and so I assess and evaluate. Um, yeah, but of course, it's just within the context of being a therapist. But on a personal level, I never judge other people, and I encourage others to be their authentic selves as well. And I'm always willing to go outside of my comfort zone to try something different. So, you know, moving forward, that's what I encourage people to do. Those are my parting thoughts. What
Awesome.
about you, Will?
Um, for me, I guess it would be accepting or understanding that you don't have to just compartmentalize things in your life. And I used to try to do that. So I would be like, this is the spiritual part of me, or this is the religious part of me, and this is me at work, and this is me at home. I used to be very divisive in how I view things. But then for me, it came down to a lot of self acceptance and understanding that this is all parts of me and they don't have to fight with each other. They can still mesh, and I'm still me, and I'm not losing part of me because I enjoy this or I enjoy that. Um, so for me, that was really freeing to understand that I can still have my own spirituality and my own personal relationship with with my God, or my experience of spirituality. But that doesn't mean I still can't have fun and I still can't have sex and enjoy that, because it all comes down to being a balanced person. And when I was doing that, I wasn't balanced, and it was giving me anxiety. So understanding, for me, it was letting go of a lot of the things that used to try to put me in those boxes, and then understand that that's you don't have to be that way. So I think that's what it was for me, was a lot of personal acceptance, and understanding that you can have a spiritual relationship and you can have a good sex life, and the two are not mutually exclusive. So that's what it was for me, and it took me looking at myself, but also looking at other religions and other spiritualities as well, outside of what my own personal beliefs might be, because that really helped me understand the universe is a whole lot more complex than what I was raised to believe. And honestly, that's really helped me embrace my own sexuality.
I love that. I love that. It's not mutually exclusive. So, well, I thank you both for participating in this very personal and complex topic. And I think it will be beneficial for our listeners. And I'm looking forward to the feedback that we get from our listeners.
Thank you for opening the dialogue, Erin. I really enjoyed talking about it as well.
This podcast is produced by Erin Alexander, hosted by Kenny Pullitt and Erin Alexander, and mixed and edited by William Lynch.